Hello there, my lovelies. Welcome back to my channel, Boomy Reactions. Now, today, guys, we have a slightly different video. It's very interesting, this one. This is a history video, and this one has been requested by one of my lovely patrons, Arctictron. Thank you for your support, and thank you for requesting this one. So, Arctictron, you say, "Hey, Boomy." So, I've got a bit of an odd reaction request. This is a video from the channel called Alternate History Hub. Okay, I've not heard of this one before, I don't think anyway. The guy who drove across America for a $50 bet. Okay. I'm intrigued and hooked. And this is about a guy who drove from the West Coast to the East Coast out of spite. I'm on board. We don't need a better reason. Spite is fine. So, Arctictron, you also say, as for the channel itself, you say, the name's a little bit odd for a video that's about a true historical event, a true story. But while most of the videos are about alternate history, he sometimes draws on the real history because that's what, most of the time, that is what alternate history is. It draws on real history. But I'm right in thinking, are we on the same level, guys? Alternate history, when we talk about alternate history, there's like a point of divergence, isn't there? There's that what if element. So it normally draws on real events and then it goes off on a tangent like, but what if this happened? Am I right? Just checking we're on the same wave level here. Okay. And Arctictron, you might show me a few more videos. They might be interesting. Also, his real name is Cody. Okay. Well, this sounds like a very interesting channel. So I've already done enough talking for now. Let's have a look. Let's catch up with this video. So this is the guy who drove across America for a $50 bet. I love it. Oh, right. Okay, so already we're at 1903. Okay, so at that point in time, getting from one coast to the other coast in America is going to be significantly harder. Oh, the plot thickens. Okay. Oh, and guys, please don't forget, if you're enjoying these reactions, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, my lovelies. Thank you so much. If you're interested, I have a Buy Me a Coffee account, and that link is over here. And if you'd like to help support this channel any further, I do have a Patreon account. If you fancy checking that out, that link is in the description below.
In a private social club, a lively debate was about to begin. Club members were fixated on a discussion about cars. The question was whether these new horseless carriages could ever replace the horse. But it wasn't much of an argument, because most of these club members agreed that the car was a fad, a trend.
Isn't that hilarious? These motor vehicles, they'll never catch on. I think it's just a little bit of a trend at the moment. They're not going to catch on.
That would only temporarily remain relevant before people came to their senses. Now, this might seem silly today, but honestly at the time, most believed it. This was 1903. Almost nobody owned a car. For the most,
it's almost like, Elon Musk developing like a hover vehicle, a hover car, and then everyone being like, yeah, but come on, who's going to buy one of them? It's not going to replace the car. Fast forward to 50 years later, and we're all driving them.
Most part, they were just too expensive. The cheapest budget models would usually cost $650 or so, which was about a year and a half of the average worker's salary. And this was the low-end stuff. If you wanted a nicer vehicle, that might cost 10 times as much as what most people would make in a year.
Is it that much different these days? Depending, I suppose there's a lot of variety, isn't there, on the price of cars. So it depends what kind of, what kind of spec you want as to how much you want to spend.
These were for the wealthy. And even then, not everybody had one. Because the reality was, they weren't really that useful. People had horses and carriages, and society was built around this. You generally lived and worked in the same town. If you needed to go across the country or another state, you just used the railroads. The Transcontinental Railroad could get you from coast to coast in 3.5 days. The car couldn't get you from coast to coast ever.
Oh, I'm getting the sense that this argument is going to be followed by a presumably quite wealthy chap saying, well, I'll drive from West Coast to East Coast in one of these newfangled car whatsits. And we'll see you know, who gets there quicker, or, you know, how easy it is. Is that where this is going?
Very few roads in the United States were paved, because why would they need to be? Outside of the major cities, you generally expect to find a dirt path.
Yeah.
And out west, in the most undeveloped regions miles from civilization, a car was useless. Even in the cities, in the ideal circumstances, these cars were extremely unreliable. If you wanted to just take a drive for even a few miles, it wouldn't be too unexpected to have some mechanical failure, or need a repair along the way. This is a time before any standards of what a car should even be existed. Some models had electric engines, some steam, and some powered by gasoline. Sometimes the steering wheel was on the left side, or the right, or you might not even have one.
You might not even have one. I don't think I've ever seen any early models of what cars used to look like. It's quite interesting, actually. So who decided universally which side the wheel went on? Because I'm sure you guys are aware of this. We have the opposite to you. I think it's us, Australia and New Zealand, I think. But yeah, we're on the right side of the car. You guys are on the left. But then it corresponds with what side of the road you drive on, right? So we're on the left side of the road. You know what I mean.
Cars had 3 wheels, some
3?
4, and most cars
Okay.
didn't have doors or roofs or windshields. They were seen as unsafe, a nuisance for pedestrians and cyclists alike. Some states went as far as passing laws to ban cars, or at least limit their use with extreme restrictions.
Well, that makes
An automobile back then was this uncommon, expensive, impractical means of transportation.
It's not actually that much different from like a Mario Kart car, is it?
That was seen as little more than a status symbol for the wealthy.
Yeah.
They were not seen as legitimate competition to horses. Now, as this debate went on, a guest at the club decided to chime in. His name was Horatio Nelson Jackson. He was not from San Francisco, he was from Vermont. Years prior, he had been a doctor but fell ill to tuberculosis and left his practice behind. He was in town because he was heading home after searching for gold and silver in Alaska and Mexico. Horatio liked cars. You could call him something of a motoring enthusiast. He wasn't an expert by any means, or even a proficient mechanic. He was just a fan, and he didn't take too kindly to somebody trash-talking about this cool new technology. He believed that the car could replace the horse. It had potential, and he would prove it to these naysayers. So he made a bet. The wager was for $50, and he claimed he would get a car and drive it from San Francisco to New York City in under 90 days. This seemed unreasonable to the members of the club, because it had never been done before, and people had tried. Every car manufacturer would love to have made the first car to drive across the country, and some had gone through great planning and expense to try and make it happen.
Right. Okay. So if he manages to do this, this is a very big deal. This is a monumental, you know, it's a big milestone. How long would it have taken on a horse and cart? Roughly, how long do you think?
But they never could. It was just too difficult. The infrastructure did not exist. How could you cross the Great Plains? What if the car broke down? How would you get repairs in a timely manner? Even with seemingly unlimited funds and months of meticulous planning, these corporate-sponsored teams couldn't come close to driving across the United States. And then this guy, this random guy, is betting that he'll be the first to do it. With no experience, or training, or motivation beyond the fact that he wants to do it. So they
with no motivation beyond this spite and a bet. Okay. I was just thinking maybe Horatio has some kind of mechanical skills which has fueled this confidence that he's going to be able to do it. You know, because I think the major drawback for me, if I was in his position, was obviously going to be if you had any mechanical issues, any car troubles, which even in modern cars, it's not, you know, they happen, don't they? But like the narrator said, they were very, very common. Did he manage to do it just out of sheer luck? Like nothing went wrong for him, and he was just the luckiest person to be able to do this and win his $50.
accepted the bet. A $50 wager
experience,
might
no?
seem a bit low for such a massive endeavor, and that's
Yeah.
because it was. Don't get me wrong, $50 was still a lot of money in 1903.
But
It would be
not
the
that
equivalent of
much.
around $1,700 in 2023. Horatio's wife was traveling with him at the time, and when he told her about this bet, she surprisingly didn't seem to mind.
Oh!
She wasn't gonna ride along with him, she just took the train back to Vermont. He was going to need somebody to join him in this adventure though, because, you know, he wasn't a mechanic, but he knew one. Sewell K.
okay.
Crocker, a 22-year-old former bike racer turned auto mechanic. Now,
Okay.
there's some discrepancies of whether Sewell and Horatio knew each other well before this adventure. Some statements claim Sewell taught Horatio and his wife to drive cars before, but regardless, Sewell was coming along. He suggested that Horatio should buy a 1903 Winton touring car, which he believed to be the most reliable model around. It was a fancy car, and it came at a price. Since this was a fancy car, not a lot of people had this specific model, especially out west. Most of the time, people would order cars directly from the factory, so you weren't really gonna find something like this at a local car dealership. Luckily, a Wells Fargo executive in San Francisco had that exact model and offered it to
Oh.
Horatio for $3,000. This was about $500 over the list price, and the car already had quite a few miles on it.
I was just going to say, what is this chap's motivation for selling it? Does he wholeheartedly believe in Horatio's mission? No, he's going to sell it because he's asking for way more than it's worth, and it's already got a fair amount of wear and tear on it. He's not daft, is he?
The tires were not in great shape, but Horatio bought it anyway. If you were wondering, $3,000 in 1903 money would be like $100,000 today, which is pretty expensive and excessive when you consider that this is in an attempt to win a $50 bet. Now, the reason Horatio had this kind of money is all because his wife's family was incredibly wealthy. They got
Do you know, this is in the back of my head. I just assumed Horatio came from money, and that's where he had these all this money, all these finances to back up a bet. An expensive bet or a costly bet for not much gain to win $50. Oh gosh. I think it's amazing that despite the fact that, you know, his wife must think that he's nuts. He's only going to win $50 if he wins this, but, and you know, she's not, you know, seen red and absolutely gone off on one at the idea of him doing this. She's just kind of accepted it and just thought, oh, okay, you do that. I'm going to get the train. Have fun. How does she feel about him just kind of wasting her inheritance and her money?
their fortune from something called a celery curial, whatever that was, and he was gonna need that money, because this was gonna be expensive. He named his expensive new car the Vermont, because he was from Vermont. Makes sense. Over the next few days, he got some supplies, plopped those in the back of the car, and just 4 days after making this bet, Horatio and Crocker set out on a journey. With no expertise or preparation, these two were going on the first cross-country road trip in American history. Horatio may not have had a plan on how he was going to get to New York, but he did have a general strategy in mind. He wanted to avoid the roughest terrain, the mountains, the deserts, so from San Francisco, they just went north. Pretty quickly, the true scale of this challenge became apparent. Almost immediately, the car needed repairs.
So this is largely going to depend on the time of year that they're going as well. Did they factor this into that bet? Because, you know, I imagine the route that they're taking here, weather's going to factor into this an awful lot. So what we're imagining, maybe this is like late springtime, early summer, late summer, just any time outside of cold seasons, really, isn't it? Okay. What snacks do you reckon they took on their road trip? I hope they picked some good ones.
And it would continue to need repairs every few miles. The Winton's top speed was a humble 30 miles per hour, but it wasn't like they were going to reach that on the rough roads in the west. This was going to be a slow journey. As they went through the first few towns, they started to get quite a bit of attention from the locals. Not because they were trying to make history by crossing the United States in a car. No, it was just because they had a car.
Yeah.
Cars weren't common, even in the cities. So most people in these small towns had never seen one of these things. They didn't even know if they would see one again. Every time these guys would show up in a small town, it would be a big story. The newspapers would report that a car was coming to town, so people would line up and down the streets. Kids would try to get out of school. The whole town would stop what it was doing just to try and see these two guys driving a car. They'd ask for rides.
I mean, to be fair, I'm using the hover car as an example. It's the only thing I can think of right now. So let's imagine someone has designed this amazing hover car that's, you know, it's kind of like like the height of a house, maybe. I don't know. This is very pie in the sky. It's hypothetical. If you knew the route that this hover car was going to take in this day and age, you would want to see it, wouldn't you? A lot of people would line the streets, or whatever the route was, to see this wonderful invention that they may very well never ever see again. So I get it.
It would be a big
there.
event. Rumors would spread across the countryside. A car's coming to town. And this just brought a huge surge of excitement through these rather isolated communities.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't really know what these things were or what they were capable
Did it
of.
have a horn?
And because of that, some seem to have some pretty grand expectations. There's reports that people expected this car to zoom through the center of town at like 90 miles per hour. It was going to be so fast you couldn't even see it. The car was also a sensation since Horatio and Crocker might have to spend a few nights at each location because the car was breaking down constantly. Some repairs were simpler than others, and maybe a blacksmith could throw something together, but if some specialty part broke, the only way to get a replacement was to contact the manufacturer and wait for them to ship it across the country, which might take a few days. They had to stop for supplies frequently too, as much of their stuff would fly off the car since it was a pretty bumpy ride.
Oh no, I thought you were just going to say, because naturally you're going to run out of snacks and food, you can only pack so much. And what, this is within 90 days they're hoping to get here. So it's quite a long time. Hopefully they're making good time at this point. So, a lot of that stuff was flying off the back of the car. Oh no!
Even if they had 3 months to make this journey, I don't think anybody genuinely expected them to get to New York City on time. As they got further away from the western coast, they saw less and less people. The roads turned into trails, which turned into untamed wilderness. If they ran into a shallow creek, they might be lucky to drive through it, but more than likely they'd have to bring out the old block and tackle to get this car unstuck through the thick mud. If there was a boulder in the way, you gotta move the boulder. Every few miles had some sort of obstacle.
So, I know I keep stopping this video an awful lot. Just a quick one, guys. Did they mention what this car was powered by? Like, what fuel? Is it a fuel? I know they mentioned there were many cars around the time that had like steam-powered engines, or electric engines, or gasoline. I'm assuming that's what this one is. So, I mean, if you're prepared to roll the car through a shallow creek, maybe.
Getting traction was a challenge. It might require ripping up fences and getting those under the car. Without road signs or roads, it was difficult for these guys to figure out where exactly they were going, which sometimes resulted in some backtracking until they found their bearings. The best case scenario was to run into the railroad tracks, which they could then take to cross some of the more difficult terrain. In the lesser populated areas, they would come across people who hadn't seen another human in weeks.
Hang on, did they just say they were using the rail tracks to get over tough terrain? Okay. You'd have to be fairly confident a train wasn't using the same track that you were driving down. Oh, that seems very risky and very dangerous. I think, to be fair, they've had an awful lot of luck on their side if they've managed to do this in one piece.
And relied on their generosity for lodging and food. But sometimes, nobody was around. They might go days without eating. And this all became pretty dangerous when you consider the possibility that the car was constantly breaking down. On occasion, the car would just come to a halt, and there was no easy way to fix it on the road, so they'd have to hope that somebody would just come along and find them. At one point, this assistance came from a guy on a horse, who then had to tow the car back to town with his horse. Because this is 1903, obviously there weren't any gas stations.
No bookies.
They'd have to find local shops that sold fuel for farm equipment and hope that they didn't get swindled by opportunistic businessmen.
Yeah.
The weather could also be quite an issue. Even just driving normally, the crew wore goggles since, you know, there wasn't a windshield. But without a door, without any protection, they were stuck in the rain, thunder, or worse, with nowhere to run.
Oh, I never even thought about that. Oh my gosh. Okay, early car. There's no shelter of the car, there's no roof. Again, this is actually, when you think about it, and when they mention these kind of factors here, it's really dangerous. Oh, okay. Very uncomfortable to say the least, but dangerous worst case scenario, isn't it?
Most days Horatio wrote back to his wife, who he called Swipes for some reason. He kept telling her, well, it's been pretty rough so far, but I'm sure once we get to the next town, it's gonna be a lot easier. And he just kept saying that for every new town, and it never got easier. In the most remote regions of the sparsely populated West, the car became even more of a spectacle, sometimes too much of a spectacle. They encountered a man who had likely never seen or even heard of a car before, and he was so scared by this mysterious oncoming vehicle that he scrambled to set his horses free. He thought it was a train that had derailed, and it was coming straight for him. Horatio left his jacket in a hotel in Idaho, and when he realized that, he drove back to the town to retrieve it. When he got there, a man asked him if he wanted a new mascot for his journey. It was a dog. His name was Bud. Bud was a good dog. He traveled the countryside wearing these goggles, and people just loved him. Why wouldn't they? He was a dog riding a car. To get from San Francisco to Cheyenne, it took 42 days. At that pace, the prospect of making it across the country in under 90 days seemed less realistic, but they carried on anyway. You see, this road trip was about to turn into a race. On June 20th, 2 other men set out from San Francisco with the same plan as Horatio and Crocker. They were going to drive to New York City, but they had some big names backing them up. The Packard Motor Car Company was sponsoring their trip, and this was all planned well before Horatio made his bet.
Oh, they missed a trick there, didn't they? They should have got some sponsorship going.
Every aspect of the route, the placement of supplies, repairs, it was all planned in detail. In fact, they were so confident in their success that this was really more of a publicity stunt. They would take breaks waiting for film to arrive to capture the moment. This was all to show off that Packard's cars could make the journey, and the crew didn't even need to consider it much of a race. Horatio and Crocker didn't have that backing, and they certainly didn't have this planned out. Then on July 6th, another team sponsored by Oldsmobile also left San Francisco. This was now a 3-way race, but Horatio and Crocker had no idea at the time they were even in one. They were in the middle of the country and just hadn't gotten the news yet. The problem now was that the Packard team was actually about to overtake them in a few days. Without having to worry about waiting for repairs, with all of this actually planned in advance.
But it's very unlikely they're going to cross paths, right? It's a very, very big place. The USA. Did you know? It's massive. Even if they had a similar route, they're not going to cross paths. It would be pretty unlikely, right? No, I stand by that. It's not very likely they're going to cross paths, surely.
They were moving at nearly twice the rate as Horatio and Crocker. Now, once the two found out they had some competition, it didn't really change anything. Horatio was still confident that he could not only make it to New York City, but he would win this race that he just found out he was a part of. I love this man. As they finally made it to the Midwest, they started getting some different reactions. It wasn't the car getting the attention now. Cars were far more common the further east you went. But Horatio and Crocker and especially Bud, had gotten pretty famous over the past few weeks.
Where is Bud's goggles? He's not Bud without his little goggles on.
They had made it a decent way across the country and had tackled the most difficult part of their journey.
Okay.
The further they moved east, the better the roads would be, and they'd actually have access to more parts and lodging and food. While it wasn't going to be easy, they had shown they were definitely capable of getting to New York City. It was no longer really a question of whether they'd make it, it was just when. The Winton Company, the manufacturer who made Horatio's beloved car, contacted the team and offered to sponsor the rest of their journey. They would have access to all the resources they would need: supplies, parts, repairs, and the trip would become significantly easier.
Ooh, they don't miss a trick, do they? Jump on that bandwagon, get on that gravy train. Come on, Winton, you're in the race now. That would be very, very good for them.
Horatio declined this. The other two teams with sponsors might have started off strong, but now they were having their own issues. The Packer Company pretty much had this in the bag. They were about to pass Horatio within just a few days.
Sorry. Oh, Horatio, you're such a character. He's nuts. He's nuts. Or very spiteful, but nuts.
The marketing team for the Packer Company didn't plan a route of convenience or ease. Instead, they picked the most photogenic path, which meant going into canyons and even the Rocky Mountains. Without roads in these early cars, this was nearly impassable.
And possibly suicidal in some of those areas. I like, don't get me wrong, I'm all for the scenic route, but not in one of these early tin cans with maybe a decent steering wheel, 3 or 4 wheels. No, I would not be taking the scenic route in one of these. Oh, give me like a decent motorhome or anything any day, sure, but not this way.
Especially in a reasonable time frame, and it slowed them down to a point where they pretty much lost any chance of winning.
Oh, no.
As for the Oldsmobile team, well, they started so late they were probably never going to win anyway. By the time Horatio and Crocker, and of course Bud, got to the east, it was clear they were about to win.
Yeah.
So now, every stop they made resulted in huge crowds, tons of publicity, because this was history being made. It was clear that they were going to be the first people to cross the country in a car. And they were. On July 26th, they made it to New York City at 4:30 in the morning. The plan was to cross the country in 90 days. The journey took 63. Of course, the crew was treated as national heroes. The Vermont was now a modern marvel. This machine had taken men from one side of the country to the other. Sure, it wasn't as fast as the railroads, but they did it in their own way. While their journey was incredibly difficult, it showed something about the car that few people realized before that point. It had a purpose. It gave you a sense of freedom. These guys picked their own route, visited all the towns they wanted to, moved through the country on their own terms, rather than being forced on a straight path. And because of this, because a car could go across the country, this machine that was disregarded by many as a toy or novelty kinda became something more. Now after this whole adventure, Horatio went home with his wife to Vermont, in the Vermont, which still kept breaking down. He never collected the $50 bet, which makes sense honestly. This was never about the money, but he did end up spending a lot of money. Throughout all of this, he had spent $8,000, which in today's money is about $274,000.
He spent $274,000 of his wife's money, right? That's how he afforded this venture, and she's just so chill about it. She's just like, yeah, let's go home now. Okay, yeah, bring it. I guess it's broken down like another 5 times in the last week. Okay. The most chill wife ever. By the way, let's round of applause for Horatio's wife. Very easy going.
The constant repairs, the incredibly inefficient fuel consumption, lodging costs, food, paying for Crocker to do all of this,
Bud's goggles.
it added up. But it proved that you could drive across the country if you really, really wanted to. Eventually, the Packard and Oldsmobile teams made it to New York. The Oldsmobile team
long
was
did it
the
take them?
slowest, but they had a cheeky way of trying to make the most out of this. They dipped their car tires in the Atlantic to try and claim that they had actually gone from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic. So you know, that's the one that actually counts. The Packard team managed to make it in less time overall than Horatio, but they were still in second place. After all of this, with 3 separate teams now crossing the country successfully, more people became interested in the challenge. How fast could you make it from one side to the other? Several more attempts were made by different
everybody wanted their own
individuals,
road trip.
cutting the time down quite a bit, but there was clearly a demand for better infrastructure. As cars got cheaper and more people started buying them, there was more incentive to build better roads.
Yeah.
And by 1913, the first transcontinental highway was built, the Lincoln Highway. It would take a few more decades for the modern road systems of the US to be built, and even today they still aren't perfect. But if you want to drive from one end of the country to the other, it's a lot easier. This moment, though, in 1903, is still something special. The country that Horatio drove through was really one at the end of an era. A country before modern transportation. One of small, isolated towns. And Horatio got to see a lot of it. And while his intentions were just to prove this one guy wrong, he kinda ended up proving his point to the whole country. After this whole experience, Crocker wanted to try something more ambitious. To go around the world in a car. However, that never really worked out for him. Before he got the chance, he fell ill and died rather young. Horatio Jackson continued being Horatio Jackson, having a successful set of business ventures, but still seeking adventure. He founded in World War I, where he enlisted at the age of 42, going on to be a decorated soldier. In
He didn't have to do that at that age, did he?
1944, he donated the Vermont to the Smithsonian. From then on, he would occasionally go and visit his old car at the museum. Horatio's achievements are some of the most bizarre in American history, and all of exploration, actually. Most of these accomplishments in human history are fueled by grand aspirations of fame, wealth, or political edge. But this was a man taking on one of the greatest challenges of the time because he wanted to win an argument, because he liked cars, because he thought it would be fun. And that is Horatio Nelson Jackson.
Using his wife's money. What a character! Do you know, he must have been the most eccentric person. Oh, I wish I could have met him. I love eccentric people. I think I'm quite eccentric. Oh my gosh, it just, so much about him doesn't make sense. And that's what's the most interesting thing about him. So he just happened to really, really like cars. Big fan. Wanted to win a bet. Very stubborn. Didn't even collect the money. Didn't even want the money. Didn't even really need that $50. That was like, that's, what would you say, like pocket change to him. Doesn't really want for much money. Quite fancied the adventure. I think it's absolutely hilarious. And yeah, really, if you think about it, you could arguably say that this demonstration, this example that he didn't just give to the US, I'd say it was probably to the world as well. It could have fueled everyone's interest in, you know, developing the motor vehicle, to making it cheaper, more accessible. So it's a weird one to think. If that hadn't happened, would there have been as much interest as quickly? You know, I'm sure the interest would have eventually come because we'd all realize that they are the future of transportation, definitely. However, Horatio and co, I forgot this gentleman's name, I feel awful now, and his partner driving across the country and making, you know, a spectacle of it, this kind of media event with the addition of Bud, obviously. You know, it turned into this big thing, this media hyped attention display. You know, without that, would there have been the following interest in motor cars? I don't know, but it's an interesting one to think about, isn't it? I'd like to think actually that he fueled an awful lot of interest in it. That was Arctic Tron. That was a wonderful video. Very, very enjoyable. Thank you for requesting that, my friend. You always come up with some absolute bangers. Thank you. Guys, I hope that piqued your interest. I hope you enjoyed watching that half as much as I did. It has tickled me. Put me in a good mood now for the rest of the day. So guys, yes, I hope you enjoyed watching that along with me. I can't get my words out today, it's the phrases. Take care of yourselves, my lovelies, and I will see you on the next video. Bye bye.